Princess Diana's aide tore down Harry's petty grievances. She would be appalled at the actions of the spoiled son. Hello and a very warm welcome back to Kate Middleton and the Queen News YouTube channel. Just today, a former assistant to the late Princess Diana told all about how Harry betrayed his older brother William. The aide explained, not long before she died, Princess Diana sat William and Harry down together on the striped sofa in her drawing room at Kensington Palace. The brothers had been bickering, as they often did, and Diana decided to dispense some maternal advice. Listen, she began, you have to look after each other. She reminded them that, because of their unique position as royal princes, and objects of curiosity and envy to the world, each was the one person the other should always, her emphasis, be able to rely on. Papa, she said of her ex-husband Charles, has his life and I have mine, so it's important that you two have each other, be there for each other. As brothers, she said, they must know that they could always depend on each other. She ended by saying, I want you to promise that you will be each other's best friend. Will you promise me that? Will you swear it? The former aide continued, saying both boys, then aged 14 and 12, crossed themselves and swore that they would. I was reminded of that story, which Diana once related to me, as I searched in vain for Harry's account of his explosive and one-sided memoir Spare. Perhaps I missed it amid the rage and resentment that threads through the 416 pages. Perhaps it was lost, or perhaps it simply wasn't there. It's understandable that many people are wondering how Diana would have viewed Harry's book. I'm sure she would have been angry at the airing of so many private family secrets. A lot of her close friends agree that she would have been horrified at the entire world hearing about the strife between her beloved sons. But her overwhelming feeling, they say, would have been sadness that it all came to this. While Diana was still living, Harry and William were as close as they possibly could be. Their shared experience really gave them a reassuring protective screen. One figure who often had Diana and her sons over to stay recalls, when they were together, they were cheerful, jolly, happy boys, a bit cheeky sometimes, and of course they fought non-stop like most close siblings do, but it was no matter for concern. And while they were at Ludgrove, of course that's the Berkshire prep school where they both boarded, William was apparently always the thoughtful older brother. Diana was just proud that he would step in if Harry complained that he was being teased or bullied by the other kids. Hardly a week went by when William wasn't rescuing Harry from some scrape or another, says one of Diana's friends. She was always pleased that Wombat, as she called her elder son, was looking out for his brother. She was so proud of how protective he was of Harry. Apparently, Diana once described William as the protective male in our little unit, and the unit was made up of the three of them, and of them all, William was the shrewd one. And that was why, in spite of her reservations that Harry may find Eton College challenging academically, she was bound and determined that this precious brotherly bond would ensure that he did not just survive there, but he could also thrive. So she would have found Harry's strange account that once he arrived at the school a year after his mother passed away, he claimed that he was ignored by his brother and he was left to deal with everything all by himself. She would have found this account absolutely heartbreaking. And the question is, would she even have believed it? There was always something more desperate about Harry when he was a child, and Diana realized that. Harry was never as confident as William, and he was always a lot more vulnerable. He was never happier than when he was sitting there sucking his thumb, curled up on the lap of his mother. And Harry really loved it when he got Diana all to himself. Maybe they went to the dentist, maybe they went to the doctor. That was a chance for Harry to make sure that he had her undivided attention. No annoying big brother to share her with. And now it seems like Harry has been holding on to this toxic jealousy for quite some time. So where could it have come from? Diana went to great lengths to raise both of her sons together. She tried to make sure that whenever possible, the spotlight would shine on both of them equally. Diana understood that being born the spare wasn't necessarily an easy role. And she even complained that as the youngest of three girls, she was a real disappointment to her parents, who wanted a son to continue the Spencer family line. And that, of course, is a claim that her mother Frances said was untrue. Historically, the royal family has always treated the firstborn differently, so this was really a bold and pioneering approach from Diana. Charles, whose own memory of childhood was of a sometimes remote existence from his parents, agreed with this strategy. So when, in 1995, William began at Eton and she knew the photographers would be there to record his very first day at school, she insisted that Harry should also come along. And then during the last summer of her tragically short life and in the middle of her romantic relationship with Dodi Fayed, she took an interest in the plans by the then Prince of Wales to invite the Camerons to Balmoral, where he was enjoying a holiday with the boys. The former assistant reports, I remember her telephoning me that August day in 1997 as I watched from the bank of the River Dee the princes skim stones and play with family dogs, while they reluctantly posed for photographs. It was their first official photo call since that one at Eton, and Diana was anxious to know from me their reaction and their mood. When she subsequently learned that the palace was planning a further opportunity for pictures, but this time with William alone when he returned to begin his third year at Eton, she angrily put her foot down. It was reported that Diana said, "This is one thing that Charles and I have always agreed on." So she called her office and she told them to tell the Prince of Wales's staff that Harry must be included. She said that it was vitally important that they eliminated any kind of difference between the two. Soon enough, they will have to travel separate paths, but I am determined that this should be delayed as long as possible and that the boys are treated in exactly the same way, she said. And she meant that too. In another instance, she spoke about how once she had gently asked the Queen Mother to please stop showing William special favor because Harry had begun to notice and he had mentioned it to her. Whenever they went to see her, she always made a point of putting William next to her. I asked her not to and told her that Charles and I were united on this. Diana made sure that every single surface at Kensington Palace was filled with photos of William and Harry, just as they were at Charles's home of Highgrove. The princess would often pull out the big leather-bound photo albums to sift through the many photos that she had of her two sons. They were not separated into the heir and the spare, not at all. Instead, there they were, right beside each other. Sometimes this impartiality was even a bit ridiculous. During that last summer of her life, Diana heard that Charles had suggested that one of his alternative medicine gurus, a figure that the princess did not trust one bit, should look at the boys when the therapist next came to see him. Diana was shocked and appalled at this proposal, and she said those boys were way too young for something like that. But anyway, Diana truly believed that treating the boys equally would benefit the monarchy in the long run. Diana tried to make sure that Harry and William were not raised in the same way that Charles was. She wanted to raise them in a more casual, less formal way, and she wanted to be able to show them a lot more affection. So surely Diana would be devastated by the tragedy of Harry and William's destroyed relationship, which seems to be irreparable at this point. She also would have been disgusted by how vindictive and how petty Harry's complaints are. Even though the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage was long, it was drawn out, and it was incredibly bitter, she still never engaged in the kind of mudslinging that Harry has. In the Panorama interview, Diana was critical of Charles's ability to rule. She questioned whether or not the role was right for him. But nowhere in that interview, or in her collaboration with the author Andrew Morton for the book Diana, Her True Story, did she decide to try to destroy her husband's reputation with the kind of deeply personal attack that Harry has made against his own brother. The fact is, Diana never uttered an unkind word about their father to either William or Harry, when goodness knows there had been every provocation for her to do so. This is coming from one of her girlfriends. She was a monarchist, and she knew she had a precious role as the mother of the future king. Why would she do anything to undermine her children's future? But Harry, on the other hand, has either intentionally or just foolishly not only tried to savage his brother's image, a brother who he now describes as his arch nemesis, but also inflicted a lot of damage on the monarchy itself. Isolated within the family after she got divorced, Diana knew that each of her sons really needed each other's support. William was going to be the king someday, and Harry with all the privileges of royalty but none of the responsibility. Diana understood that one of her sons had a lot of pressure on him, and the other might face all kinds of temptation. She used to say they have to be a team. And she also liked saying that the country was lucky to have William, but apparently she saw Harry the same way too. And as they grew up, sometimes she would speculate that perhaps the brothers would be happier if the roles were reversed. On these occasions, she would cheekily take to describing Harry as GKH, and that stood for Good King Harry. So when we think about that, it can only seem tragic that the man he has become is nowhere close to Good King Harry. Harry's book is not only a betrayal of his brother, his father, and the monarchy, it has also undermined the very principles by which the mother he supposedly worshipped, and to whom, along with Meghan, the book is dedicated, wanted him to live his life.